for keeping your promise and our arrangement that we had in Pentagon during my visit to Washington. You promised me that you would come to Ukraine for the celebration of the Independence Day. And today we have this important and symbolic visit. This is not just the visit of the Secretary of Defense of the United States that we have not had for 10 years.
Святкування Дня Незалежності, ваша участь в параді,
for celebration of the Independence Day, your participation in the military parade. Today, when the representatives of our allies countries, together with the Ukrainian military servicemen, marched in the parade, testifies our unity and our solidarity.
Певно, що я і до сих пір перебуваю під враженням від нашої зустрічі на американській землі і тональності, і рівня довіри, розуміння, відкритості, чесності нашого діалогу. І я насправді з перших хвилин спілкування в Вашингтоні відчув, що пане міністре є справжнім другом України. Цілого ряду годинників в офісі пана міністра київський час був прямо перед ним, що характеризує пріоритети співпраці з Україною. Під час сьогоднішніх переговорів ми безперечно розглянули питання протидії агресії Російської Федерації проти України. Це ключова тема і наш спільний виклик. Я докладно проінформував пана міністра про безпекову ситуацію в регіоні.
Mr. Secretary informed about the security situation in the region. You may well be aware of that. The day before yesterday, I came back from Donbass. We had the meeting with representatives of the OSCE in Счастье town.
Мали дуже важливу телефонну розмову під час в нормандському форматі, і була досягнута домовленість, була підтримана пропозиція України, щоб вже з завтрашнього дня, з 25 серпня, оголосити припинення вогню. І з цього приводу в нормандському форматі була зроблена відповідна заява. Ми дуже сподіваємося на відповідальну позицію Російської Федерації щодо суворого режиму, дотримання режиму припинення вогню. Я хотів подякувати пану міністру за абсолютно чітку і рішучу підтримку адміністрації Сполучених Штатів Америки, суверенітету, територіальної цілісності і незалежності нашої держави. Це чітка позиція. І хочу наголосити, що присутність на переговорах пана Курта Волкера, спеціального посланника Сполучених Штатів Америки по Україні, є черговим підтвердженням абсолютної предметності і конкретності нашої розмови і наших переговорів. До речі, користуючись, я хочу привітати діяльність пана Волкера і рішучістю, активністю, і ми покладаємо величезне надію на вашу діяльність, на прогрес. Бажаю успіху у вашій дуже важливій справі. Хочу наголосити на тому, що якщо Москва не хоче в черговий раз змарнувати шанс у реалізації досягнутих домовленостей, впевнений в тому, що варто прийняти логіку, яку дотримуються всі учасники нормандського формату. Перше, це запровадження безпекового пакету, який складається з припинення вогню, виведення усіх російських підрозділів з території окупованого Донбасу. Третє, забезпечити негайне припинення постачання зброї і військ на окуповану територію. Четверте, забезпечити вільний доступ міжнародних спостерігачів організації
the access of the OSCE observers on the whole territory of Donbass, including the territory which is not controlled by the Ukrainian government. It's also very much important to deblock the release of hostages. As of today, verified 130 hostages presence, and you may know that in Donetsk I had the meeting with the relatives of the hostages, both in the occupied territory as well as on the territory of the Russian Federation, and we demand immediate progress on the release of hostages. Last but not the least, we exchanged our views with Mr. Secretary as for the presence of the international troops in Donbass. We are talking about the deployment of possible peacekeeping operations of the United Nations with the mandate of the UN Security Council in certain regions of Donetsk and Lugansk regions. We stress that such presence would facilitate the security and to get back on the political track of the Minsk process. Of course, it will not be complete if we have not touched upon the issue of the Crimea. And I'm grateful to Mr. Secretary for the clear and unwaverable position. Crimea has been, is, and will remain Ukrainian territory. It belongs to Ukraine, and it should come back to Ukraine. There is no other way to stop converting the peninsula in the territory of non-freedom into the military base. Does not exist. I express my gratitude to the U.S. administration for the last restrictive measures which confirm that the United States stand ready to be the leader in the transatlantic front of sanctions. And we hope that the Kremlin will heed to the international community, will stop its hybrid provocations and will facilitate stabilization. Otherwise, I say that the price of the aggression will be higher. Though I would like to say also that sanctions is not a name in itself, but just a tool, an instrument to get Russia back at the table of negotiations and to secure the complete implementation of the Minsk process. I'm confident that this is the only possible way for the situation development for us. Today we continue talking about the defense support of Ukraine, about the strengthening of the existing military cooperation, and I thanked our American partners, first of all, for the military assistance that we have had from the first minutes of the aggression. We are very satisfied with the level of preparation of the Ukrainian servicemen, the support of advisors in defense and security region. We agreed to make it also on the operative level in the framework of the transatlantic cooperation and the framework of the NATO cooperation and the cyber security and against cyber crime and on many other issues. I would like to say that Ukraine, being the country which renounced the third largest nuclear arsenal, which has unique technologies on rocket building, we strictly keep our undertaken obligations, and it is important for us that the safeguards that Ukraine received in the framework of the Budapest Memorandum are complied with. I would like to touch upon approaches that we share, proposed by President Trump, a new strategy of the United States regarding Afghanistan. On our side, I confirmed contribution to realization of this strategy in the interest of the peace and security. Time and again, Mr. Secretary, I would like to thank you for your visit, for your presence, and for your participation in the military parade in Ukraine. This is the position of the real and genuine friend of Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and what a day. This is a day that's going to live long in my memory, to feel the refreshing sense of independence, of freedom, and a reminder to me as an American not to take something for granted because our country's had it so long. But, Mr. President, it's an honor to stand alongside you on your Independence Day. Have no doubt the United States also stands with Ukraine in all things. We support you in the face of threats to sovereignty and territorial integrity and to international law and the international order writ large. We do not and we will not accept Russia's seizure of the Crimea. And despite Russia's denials, we know they are seeking to redraw international borders by force, undermining the sovereign and free nations of Europe. Russia put its reputation on the line when it accepted the Minsk ceasefire agreement, which called for an immediate ceasefire, withdrawal of all the heavy weapons, and to grant the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe unfettered access under the Minsk agreement. In 1994, Russia signed the Budapest Memorandum, as the President said, and alongside the United States, United Kingdom, and Ukraine. And that provided Ukraine with assurances that all parties would respect its independence, its sovereignty, and its existing borders. And in that memorandum, Russia also promised to refrain from the threat or use of force in exchange for the Ukraine's relinquishment of nuclear weapons. Once again, under the 1997 NATO-Russia Founding Act, Russia agreed to refrain from the threat or use of force against each other or any other state, its sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence. Unfortunately, Russia is not adhering to the letter, much less the spirit of these international commitments. The U.S. and our allies will continue to press Russia to honor its Minsk commitments, and our sanctions will remain in place until Moscow reverses the actions that triggered them. As President Trump has made clear, the United States remains committed to diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine. And I, too, am especially pleased to be here today with Ambassador Volker, the U.S. Special Representative. Ambassador Volker is coordinating carefully with our allies as well on these efforts. As Secretary Tillerson, our Secretary of State, said in July, the United States' goals are to restore Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and to seek the safety and security of all Ukrainian citizens regardless of nationality, ethnicity, or religion. We in the United States understand the strategic challenges associated with Russian aggression. Alongside our allies, we remain committed to upholding the widely accepted international norms that have increased global stability since the tragedy of World War II. Mr. President, we continue to support Ukraine and remain committed to building the capacity of your armed forces to defend their country and to defend protecting the Ukrainian people. We applaud the Ukraine's commitment to reform and to modernize its defense sector according to NATO standards. This will make Ukraine's forces more operationally effective as well as more effective protectors of the Ukrainian people. And we look forward to the full implementation of NATO standards in the midst of this conflict you are currently fighting. The United States and Ukraine are cultivating a lasting strategic partnership already 25 years in the making, built on common security interests and shared principles. I look forward to continuing to build on that partnership, which we strengthened in June when President Trump hosted you, Mr. President, at the White House, and reinforced today during our meetings here in this beautiful, historic city. Thank you again, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mattis.
Now it's time for questions. One question from each side. First goes to Ukrainian side. Українські новини, прошу.
Віолетта Чайковська, Українські новини.
Запитання до пана Порошенка і до міністра Меттіса. Хотілося б уточнити щодо вашого обговорення зміцнення оборонної допомоги. Уточніть, чи обговорювали ви можливості надання Сполученими Штатами Україні оборонної чи, можливо, летальної зброї? Чи можемо ми найближчим часом розраховувати на подібне рішення від Сполучених Штатів? І від чого саме, чи, можливо, від кого зараз воно залежить? А у пана Порошенка хотілося which are the factors that dictate the final decision. And especially I'd like to ask Mr. President and the President, Mr. Volker and Mattis, did you have discussion with Mr. Surkov? Well, what were his impressions, what were the results of your meetings with Mr. Surkov, and what will be the further steps of the United States to foster Minsk process?
If you allow, I will start. Well, really, we talked all sides of our cooperation with the United States of America, including rendering to Ukraine the enlargement of our defense capabilities, cooperation in military and technical sector. I would divide this question into two parts. First part, really, yet back during my visit, we agreed that we would have a very active dialogue regarding the defense capabilities of Ukraine. It's not about only the rendering of lethal weapons, but the wrapping up of defense capabilities, radio-electronic defense, the means which intensify the capabilities of our defense forces. Well, talking over these issues requires silence. Today, I would abstain from commenting on the topic on these issues, but I would like to say that being the President of Ukraine, I'm satisfied with the level of our negotiation and cooperation. We see a clear-cut position of our strategic partner and ally, the United States of America, and I'm very satisfied as the President of Ukraine. And regarding Ambassador Walker, I would like to welcome the activities of Ambassador Walker. I would like to say that we are very much satisfied with the appointment of such an experienced analyst, diplomat, and I'm sure that interaction and cooperation that we are having today at the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the representatives of my administration can testify to a very high activity of Mr. Walker, including during the meeting with Mr. Surkov.
Regarding the relationship that we have, the strategic relationship, I believe that no relationship stays the same. It either gets weaker or stronger. And by being here, I'm making a statement that we intend to strengthen the relationship between our two countries. I need to come here and to better understand the situation your soldiers face on the front lines. This permits me, better informed, to go back and advocate for what I believe you need as brought to me by your Minister of Defense and certainly your President. For example, we've just approved, just very recently, in the last couple of weeks, another $175 million worth of equipment, including some specialized equipment that can be used to help defend the country, bringing to a total of nearly $750 million in the last several years. So we are in this very, very much in support of you. I would also point out that on the defensive lethal weapons, we are actively reviewing it. I will go back now, having seen the current situation, and be able to inform the Secretary of State and the President in very specific terms what I recommend for the direction ahead. Thank you.
And the question from American side, New York Times, please.
Thank you. I would like to, Michael Gordon, New York Times, I would like to take another crack at that question that was just asked. First, for Secretary Mattis, you made some very strong comments here about Russian aggression and supporting the Ukrainian armed forces, and the previous question was about what actions are going to come from the United States. And it's been reported already in the United States that the State Department and the Defense Department do support the provision of Javelin and defensive lethal arms to Ukraine, and that the matter is before the White House, and the question is, will President Trump himself support it? My question is, do you, as a matter of principle, believe that providing defensive lethal weapons like Javelin to Ukraine can increase deterrence with regards to Russia, or do you accept the Obama administration's argument that such measures could be provocative? And for President Poroshenko, you discussed the ceasefire for an international audience. Could you please tell us, in your estimation, how many Russian forces are currently in eastern Ukraine, and what specific steps you would like to see the Russians take in coming days? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, defensive weapons are not provocative unless you're an aggressor. And clearly, Ukraine is not an aggressor since it's their own territory where the fighting is happening. As far as my discussions with the Commander-in-Chief, with the President, I owe him some confidentiality on that. So I prefer not to answer that right now, Mr. President.
I only can support what the Secretary said, that first of all, we demonstrate very high level of responsibility when we have any defensive opportunity, including what we have from the United States. First of all, we have our own anti-tank weapons, and having discussion about the supply to Ukraine, any defensive weapons, it would be just to increase the price if Russia make a decision to attack my troops and my territory. And that would be strong motivation to stop them from the very irresponsible step. I can consider that exactly like this. At the same time, I thank you for your question about the importance of the ceasefire, so-called back-to-school ceasefire, which was approved on the Normandy format phone conversation. And what specific step we're waiting from Russia? Point number one, to withdraw Russian troops. And the information of our intelligence confirmed by our partners, minimum number of Russian troops now, regular troops, now being on the occupied territory is about 3,000. And among 39,000 of the troops which are on the occupied territory, we have also Russian commanders, starting from the platoon, company and battalion commander, all of them representing, not representing, are members of the Russian regular troops. From one point, this is extremely dangerous. From another point, we can find out even something positive, that they are very well operated by Russian Federation, and that's why they're rising up at the same time the responsibility of the Russian Federation and Russian ability to keep the ceasefire. And practical step again, withdraw Russian troops, provide the uninterrupted access of the Special Monitoring Mission of OSCE to the whole territory, including the border, withdraw and halt and stop to supply new armament through the uncontrolled part of the Russian border, and the progress in releasing the hostages. This is the first step for the security package, which we are expecting immediately. And the progress for the international presence, including the possible presence of the UN peacekeepers, which would be a guarantee for fulfilling the obligation which would be reached in implementation of Minsk agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.